All right, thank you. And hello, museum families, and welcome to RBCM at Home Kids, a play date through screens across British Columbia and the world. The previous sessions are recorded and you can find them on our Royal BC Museum YouTube page. This summer, we won't be continuing with RBCM at Home Kids, but we will be doing a program called RBCM at Home Summer, which is both for adults and kids, and we hope that you can join in. All that information is on our website now. So my name is Chris O'Connor, and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. The museum and my home is on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, here in Victoria on Vancouver Island. I'm an uninvited guest on this territory and grateful to live, learn, and raise a family on this land. And I realize that I'm here on this land, but you're joining in probably from lots of different places all over BC and beyond. So just give a moment to think about the territory that you're on and make a connection with the land that you're on and the rich history of that land that you're on right now. So I was saying to Tina earlier that this is the second time that we've had the Shaw Center for the Salish Sea, though Tina was not a guest last time, but I know you were in the background, Tina. You might have been like holding the camera or something. You were close by.
No, yeah, moral support. I was moral support for Annika.
Yeah, and Annika did such an amazing job. And I'm really so grateful that you're back. The Shaw Center for the Salish Sea is a really important friend of ours here at the museum, a really important cultural and biodiversity center of understanding the Salish Sea. And we really appreciate all the work that you do. If you live on the island or if you are able to come to the island this summer, definitely check out the Shaw Center for the Salish Sea. There's so much to explore there, and it's easy in a day to come to both of our institutions. So Tina Kelly is the head of learning and is it operations?
And communications.
And communications.
Yeah,
right.
that's a temporary addition.
Okay, yeah, that's why it
yeah.
the other day when I saw.
Yeah.
So, head of learning and communication. So thank you so much, Tina, for joining us today.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for having us. Nice to come here, and I'm grateful to be here with you on the Lekwungen speaking territory. I guess my world is kind of split across two territories, which I'm very grateful for. The Shaw Center for the Salish Sea is on the territory of the Wasanich people, the Senchothan speaking language, and it's a really beautiful territory to present. As you mentioned, thanks for the nice plug about the aquarium. We take pride in the diversity that we show there, and we're exclusively Salish Sea species. I can't tell you exactly what it is, but we do have a new exhibit coming in the summertime, and we're very excited about that. So people can stay tuned for that. Pardon me?
When does that open?
Oh, aim for the middle of July, just to be safe.
All right.
Everything going smoothly. Yes, it's pretty exciting.
Great.
Yeah.
And today, so we're gonna, because we're interested in orcas here, you're interested in orcas there. And one of the ways that orcas are endlessly fascinating in so many different ways, but one of the ways is to think about what do they eat and what do they eat, what the things that they eat, what do they eat? So I'm really excited to learn a little bit more about food webs and how everything is connected in some way. So
yeah, and what better way to do that than through craft? And I have to say, I'm also very excited to be here today, because with this last year of no hands-on activities, we've really been missing the craft facilitation. So I haven't had crayons in my hand for quite some time. So this is a really fun day for me too. So I'm going to have some fun with the technology that Chris has set me up for. So bear with me on that, but I'm pretty excited.
And as we usually do with these sessions, so we put in the chat and in the comment section on Facebook Live what the materials you'll need. If you don't have them, not a problem, stay with us, and then you can go back and do it later. One of the materials is a template with some images. If you can print that out. If you can't print that out, that's okay. You could also just free draw that too. Do whatever you can that with what you have. It's perfect. We're just happy that you're here with us. Do what you can with what you have.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Chris. I actually wanted to mention that as well. So hopefully as I go along, I'll give you some tips on different things that you can do to adapt it or make do with materials that you might have. And I had my summer staff create some samples and templates that are sort of a bit different than the main sort of craft that we have. So at the end too, I'll show you some really interesting and creative ways that you can make it and put it together and add different languages and poems and those kind of things. So I am going to maybe try to set up this document camera that I've been provided with. This should be exciting.
Yes, you've just become an orca whale.
I've just
you picked the other one, I think.
Okay. Ta-da! How is that?
That's good.
Perfect. Okay. Let me roll over.
You might have your virtual background still on too. So, oh no, you got it.
Oh, okay. So as Chris mentioned, here is the template that I'm talking about. It is actually 2 pages, but really you only need 1 if you want to do our first type of killer whale or our first eco type that I'll mention. Now I'll just go through really quickly the 3 different types that we have here on the coast of BC. And then I'm going to make one specific one with you today, but there are some options for you. So don't worry too much about how these are put together just quite yet, because we're going to do some coloring and some cutting. So the first one, we'll call it the resident killer whale or orca, and it is the fish eater. So our food chain here is going down smaller and smaller and smaller. The next one is the transient orca, and they eat higher on the food chain. So between the salmon and the killer whale, there'll be a marine mammal. And in this case, we have a harbor seal, the link in that food chain. And then the next one or the last one is the offshore killer whale. Just pop it down. And you can see that instead of a harbor seal, this orca really, really loves to eat sharks, in particular sleeper sharks. So the first page of the template gives you everything you need to make a resident orca, which will go through individual species. And then the second page gives you the option of doing an offshore or a transient with the harbor seal. So I'm going to go ahead and start making a transient because I want an extra added layer with the harbor seal in there. And like Chris mentioned, you can start just drawing the shapes if you don't have the template. And I encourage you to actually color on this sheet. So from my experience, trying to color them after being cut out, trying to hold the little krill in one place and coloring it gets a bit tricky. So I would recommend before we cut that you start to color the shapes. And the center here on all of these individual species, you can leave blank for now. And there's some options there at the end to change that up. So I'm gonna start coloring, and I was very excited to have fresh new crayons today, but what I've done is I've taken the paper off because sometimes it's a little bit faster when I color sideways. And also when you color on the full sheet, you don't have to worry too much about staying in the lines because you get to cut it out. So there's a little bit of a cheater for me. So this part here, I will leave white for the eye patch, but you don't have to make your killer whale black and white. You can make it rainbow, you can make it purple, any color you like. It's your art, it's your food chain. Okay. So
Also nice when you on your side too, it looks, there's like some nice texture to it too.
Yeah, or they're when the sun hits them, their wet skin when they come up to the surface can have some interesting sort of shadows and patterns and sort of glisten shiny spots. The other thing that I want to mention is sometimes I get a little bit excited about making things really realistic and bringing in other things to talk about in crafts. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the shape of the dorsal fin, but also this place here called the saddle patch. And this particular whale here is actually not a transient, it's a resident, so it's a fish-eating whale. Its name is K14, K14, and the left and the right side have different saddle patches. And if I want to make my craft a little bit more realistic, I could actually maybe just gently shadow in sort of a gray or white if I had something a little bit white, and I could sort of color in a saddle patch and make it an individual whale with a pattern that maybe has a little bit of a little dip in it. So you can add extra features. You're not limited to what we've drawn on our outline. You can add extra things. And later on, I'll show you a whale where I actually altered the fin, the shape of the fin, as well as made some nicks and notches, because that's another way you can tell whales apart. Maybe I can find one here. Here's a notch here in the fin. L41 has this little notch that identifies it from all other whales.
I'm also noticing with some of those pictures that there's like some little white dots on the dorsal fin too, with some of them too. So.
Oh yeah, so these ones here.
Yeah.
So this is just a reflection from the shine on the killer whale's skin. So this is just from the camera. You might get another picture of that same whale and it won't have that sort of the reflection of the light on the wet skin. But yeah, good observation. This one here, you can see the sun, the angle of the camera, weather conditions, sea conditions, camera type, all those things can affect sort of the quality of the photo. So you can go ahead and start coloring other species. I'm not going to limit to, maybe I'll go crazy here with some purple salmon. You'll see it says Chinook salmon, and it's only one of the 5 species of salmon that live here on the coast. But what they really like, if you're a resident, is Chinook salmon. Really like Chinook salmon a lot.
And Tina, when you say resident and transient, can you talk a little bit more about what that is, just in case anyone out there is?
Yeah, for sure. I know
we're all on the same page with that.
Flipping back between the two terms. So the resident killer whales are the fish eaters. So they really, let's see, they love Chinook salmon. The majority, 80% of their diet is Chinook salmon. So they travel the waters trying to follow the salmon moving about. And because of the salmon movement, out of rivers, things like that, they have been traditionally a little bit more predictable in their patterns in terms of killer whale movement. Because they also hunt sort of something like a schooling fish, like a salmon, they can be in really large groups. So their social structure is a little bit different than other ecotypes of killer whales. The transient killer whales are the ones that eat other whales, seals, sea lions. They eat higher on the food chain and they eat other mammals. So because they have to be a little bit more stealth in hunting something that's, quite smart, the other mammals, they actually hunt and are found in smaller groups. So there's lots of differences between the two. There's actually a difference in the shape of their fin. And I'm going to show you back one of the samples here. This was my transient example. You can see how I modified the fin. So resident fish-eating whales, their fin is a little bit more curved at the top. And transient killer whales have a bit more pointy, almost shark-like, some might say shark-like fin at the top. There's lots of little slight differences that people who study these whales probably notice a bit more than we would if we saw whales off the shore here. We'd probably just be really excited they were killer whales, and happy to watch them. But there are some differences there.
Which is really helpful when you're seeing the killer whale just coming out of the water briefly and then going back down. So having those differences is helpful just to know what kind of orca they are.
Yeah, and you think, you know, scientists, they get so good at this when this is their specialty. You know, they might be in a moving boat and whales coming up for just a brief second, and they're so skilled at identifying individual whales by the pattern on the saddle patch, and also the shape or the pattern on the dorsal fin, that in a split-second sighting, scientists know these whales so well, down to the individual, which is pretty incredible. So I'm actually going to, because I said at the beginning that I wanted to make a transient, so that means that I need to add the layer of the marine mammal. So I'm gonna color a harbor seal. And I did bring a few extra things to show. And one of them is, imagine an animal that has to crunch through.
Do you mind turning that over just so we could see it as up, right side up?
The right, yes. Thank you.
It's so cute too. I love that harbor seal.
It is pretty cute. You know, this craft actually is kind of a fun thing. We've been open, the Shaw Center for the Salish Sea, open now for 12 years. And this craft has been modified by various educators and summer students over the years. So you can see that the harbor seal is a little bit different of a design than the others, and the shark's a little bit different. So over time, we just sort of kept adapting and making extensions and using sort of the same idea, but making lots of different additions, which is kind of fun. I don't think we could give any one person credit for this. It's definitely a team effort. But when you think about eating salmon or harbor seals, sea lions, you think about, how do you get through all those crunchy, heavy bones and flesh and skin and blubber? And they do it with really sharp conical teeth. I hope can you see that really sharp tooth there?
Yeah.
So all killer whale teeth are the same shape. So when we think about our mouths, we think we have some pointy teeth for gripping. We have some flat teeth. We have our sort of grinding, grazing teeth for omnivores. And we chew our food. Killer whales don't chew their food. So they kind of do a big chomp, sort of use their conical sharp teeth to sort of cut through the food that they want to eat. And then they swallow that bit whole. And then they go on and they bite another piece. So that's why this really sharp tooth here comes in handy. And Chris, I'm not really aware of the time, so.
They're eating together, so would that mean, like with a harbor seal, that like multiple orcas would be eating from that one harbor seal?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually it's the same for salmon. So the Chinook salmon that they really, really love are also called king salmon. If you're in the United States, you might call it a king salmon. And it's the largest of the species of Pacific salmon. And they do the same thing. So one might enjoy, you know, the tail portion, and then while it's taking a bite, another whale comes up beside it, takes a bite, and so on and so on. So all the ecotypes share their food. It's not like a one meal deal. Having said that, some transients, they don't tend to have the same sort of group structure as residents. They don't typically stay in families, or usually stay in families. So they, if they're solitary and they're traveling alone, they might enjoy, obviously they would have to enjoy a meal by themselves. Whether they eat the whole thing, I'm not sure, depending on the size of what their food is that they caught. But now I've gone to small fish, and we had it labeled as Pacific herring. Mine's a little cut off here. But this really could just be, if you're going down the food chain, it's big fish eats little fish kind of concept. So we're gonna have, when we put it together, we're gonna put the small fish on top of the bigger fish, which in our case is herring and salmon. And if you haven't heard of herring, herring is a really, really important fish. In fact, scientists would sometimes call it the unsung hero of the sea. And it's like grouped with other forage fish like sardines and anchovies you might be familiar with, sand lance, surf smelt. These are all schooling small silver fish, and they call them forage fish or bait fish. And they're super important for the food web. Not just this particular food chain we're talking about, but many birds, mammals, and lots of different fish rely on these sort of small schooling silver fish. You might see these even in Victoria Inner Harbor in the springtime. This year I saw lots of seals snacking on schools of herring in the Inner Harbor, and also in a marina yesterday. So the little silver fish are really, really important. And the last link in our chain here is
sorry, Tina, just says we have a comment and a question from Facebook Live.
Okay.
Sophie was commenting on your great coloring skills, which
thank you.
I agree. and then Sophie also asks, how many salmon does an orca eat per day?
That's a great question. So they eat, the resident killer whales, I should say, they need 18 to 25 salmon per day each to sort of have their maximum sort of caloric needs met. So that's a lot of salmon, 25, the equivalent of 25. So I mentioned they share them. So the equivalent of 25, up to 25 salmon a day. And when you think of the resident population as being in the mid 70s, and you times that, that's well over 1,000 fish per day needed to sustain that population of resident whales. It's a lot of fish, a lot of fish. Okay, the last one here is the krill. Just think of it as a sort of a small zooplankton, animal plankton. And we're gonna stop with this individual. But of course, the zooplankton of animal plankton would then eat phytoplankton, plant plankton, and then of course the plant plankton gets its energy from the sun. I actually brought krill with me, pickled krill. I don't know if we can see that very well.
Can you
Maybe
bring
the
it
eyeballs?
Can you bring it up to the document camera a little bit?
No, how's that?
Yeah, that's better.
There's three, for perspective, there's 3 pieces of krill in there. You can see the eyes. And this is what we feed animals at the aquarium. We get a brick of krill that needs to be cut up and thawed every morning from the freezer. And different animals in our aquarium get fed krill and other species or other little bits and tidbits. But it's just kind of like a little shrimp. Some of you might be more familiar with krill as something that humpback whales and some of the big whales sort of engulf with their mouths and their baleen. So how are we doing for time, Chris?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Ooh, okay. So we can start cutting those out. And I have some already prepared, somewhat prepared, partly prepared. I'm going to bring in my transient, and I modeled this.
Do you want to have it come swimming in from the side?
Oh. Well, then maybe I should. Maybe I should have the seal here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The seal's lounging on a rock, startled into the sea, and
this is a sad story, though.
Everybody has to eat.
Yeah, that's true.
So I've modeled my transient killer whale after T10, a transient that has these interesting nicks and notches and saddle patch here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to layer, thinking about the next layer in the food chain. So my transient killer whale T10 has enjoyed sharing harbor seal with his neighbors. And then a harbor seal really likes fish, not just salmon. It'll eat hake and herring. It'll actually skip right past that step, and it could eat a bunch of herring. So it does like all sorts of different fish, but for our craft, we're going to add the salmon.
When you using the live transcription, it said cake and herring.
Cake.
Cake. That's what I thought you said. Just to clarify, harbor seals do not eat cake.
No, no. At the aquarium, sometimes we make krillsicles.
Oh yeah, right. I've seen that.
Prawnsicles. For our animals like our octopus. Gonna add in the forage fish, the herring. And then our last one was the krill.
Oh, and I wanted to ask you, Tina, so the harbor seal, I would imagine that they eat more solitary, like they would, like a one harbor seal would eat one salmon or one herring. Is that fair?
Yeah,
is that a fair assumption, or are they also social?
I think it's a fair assumption. They're not known to sort of be pack animals that would hunt together. I would imagine that there's you know, like other species too, there's one primary hunter, and that there's those sneaky individuals that come along for a easy meal, like the ones that sit outside a fish market, or you know, the scavengers, and not typically a scavenger, but some individuals of various species just go for the easy food.
Right.
Okay, so this is one example. So I know we have a few more minutes. So this is one example. There's the colorful example of the layers. If you want to go back and do this craft again, you can make 3 ecotypes. Here's the resident. So there's no seal. They go right to the Chinook salmon. And then here's an offshore that one of my summer students made the other day. And then they're the shark eater. But what got me really excited was some new ways of doing this craft that came up this week, again, by my summer students. And Lindsay, I don't know if you're able to see the whole thing on this page.
Oh yeah.
But what we've done is, instead of layering them, we've used the white space to create a poem.
Nice.
You could write a story.
Wait, can we read that together? Or do you have?
Yeah.
So my name is Orca. I'm black and white. To help me catch prey, I have great eyesight. Oh, it rhymes. Nice. See me on the surface from my dorsal fin and my many sharp teeth when I grin. What's that swimming? A harbor seal? Sounds to me like a delicious meal. Do you want to read the next one?
Sure. I'm a harbor seal. I like to eat fish. I see lots of salmon, my favorite dish.
Big fish eat small fish, and I like herring. Eat it all up. I don't think
I'll be sharing.
I'll be sharing.
Next up is me, and I eat krill. Learn the food web. Learning the food web is such a thrill. Okay.
And what about the krill? The krill doesn't. So you said the krill does eat, of course, eat other things, but they're just not part of this poem.
Yeah, it would eat phytoplankton, the plant plankton, and I think probably we just ran out of space. If we could add paper like this one.
It's such a great poem.
It is great, yes. I have one more I'd really like to show you, because I think this is also
for sure.
Also a really neat way of adapting this and making something else, because some people take the word or the term food chain literally and think of it very linearly and separate. So maybe we made one. Mary made this the other day, and you'll see she used the middle white space to create just labels of what the animal is. She did a nice outline too. And then it'll hang. And we have the harbor seal, Chinook salmon. Whoops!
Whoa.
It's a fast food chain. It happens very fast.
Yeah.
Chinook salmon. There's our unsung hero, the forage fish, Pacific herring, and then krill. And then we could maybe add a sun here. Then
oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so
fun.
Those are some fun adaptations to the craft to sort of add language and learning, or you could do a creative story instead of a poem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that spatially too, that being hung on the side like or hung up like that is really nice.
Yeah, a little bit of different type of dimension. there any questions?
Yeah. We'll just be one more minute. Tina, if you want to come back to your first screen.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, this will be fun. Let's see. Okay.
This is your test.
No pressure. Did I pass? I
You
passed.
passed. With flying colors.
I'm back at work.
You're back at work. And then for a second there was a harbor seal there, but then you
like,
turned into Tina. The harbor seal turned into Tina. So.
A hybrid.
Thank you so much for that. That was lovely, and I love all those variations, and I love the fact that you talked about how over the years this activity has changed depending on who's there and the styles of the animals, but also I love the fact that it's now sort of involving poetry, and especially for educators out there to incorporate literacy into an activity like this. Literacy skills, but then also spatially too, to have it take up space. And so, so lovely. If there is anyone on Facebook Live or in the Zoom room that has any questions about salmon or I mean about orcas or salmon or any of those animals along that food chain or the food web, we'll just give a moment for that. And it's interesting, like I was thinking of the krill because I was like, oh yeah, I think of krill when I think of humpback whales, but not as much when I think of killer whales. And but it's all connected, right? So so we have a question. Can you show us the transient chain again?
Sure. Now, see if we can do this with,
Yeah,
it works. See that? So the killer whale eats the harbor seal or a sea lion or a sea otter or maybe a large whale. So even a humpback whale or a minke whale, they eat high on the food chain, the other marine mammals. Maybe anything will do. Sometimes maybe seals different times of year are easy to catch. And we have lots of harbor seals along the coast. And then the seal eats a big fish. So it could be, I'm going backwards here, my finger. It's hard to do in reverse in the mirror.
This is another test.
For our purposes, we have a salmon, but it could be a hake or a different type of fish. And then big fish eats little fish. And we talked about forage fish. So sardine, anchovy, smelt, Pacific herring. I'm a really big fan of Pacific herring. It's really, really important. And then it eats zooplankton. And for our craft, it was a little tiny shrimpy-like animal called the krill. And then they eat the plant plankton, the phytoplankton, and then the plant plankton gets their energy and food from the sun. Can you see that? Whoops.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Tina.
Thank you.
We have one of the kids that was asked a question or made a comment that how much they liked your hair. So.
Oh. Thank you.
So compliment on your coloring skills and your hair, and also just like
take it.
Really great explanation of what this process of how killer whales eat and how everything's connected. So thank you so much, Tina, for joining us today. And
thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, great. So again, everyone next week we'll stay with orcas, but rather than eating, well, actually it's all connected, right? So the sounds that they make are connected to the ways that they eat. So we'll come back to eating next week, but just from a more sound perspective. So that's next week. And then we have lots of great programming for the summer. Anything coming up for the Shaw Center for the Salish Sea?
So we continue to be open 5 days a week, Friday to Tuesday, so 10 to 4:30. Parks Canada will be joining us again this summer, starting at the beginning of July. So 4 days a week, we'll have Parks Canada interpreters also there to help people learn. And then our new summer staff have started, and we're looking forward to slowly integrating more of our previous things, maybe in a different way, back into the education. So yeah.
Great, and I can't wait to go up in July when there's the new exhibition too.
Yeah, it's in a heat wave. It's also a nice place to hang out.
Sure. And it's right by the water too. So both inside and outside, it's a great place to hang out.
Yeah, it's a whole day in Sydney.
Jenny put your the website both on the chat, in the chat, and the comment section of Facebook Live. So yeah,
Thank
definitely check them out. All right, thanks everyone. We'll stop the Facebook Live feed now.